Hello there everybody and welcome to the latest chapter review for the latest chapter of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 9 The JoJoLands. So as you've no doubt already noticed, I am actually quite late on doing this chapter review for chapter 11. I was pretty deep into doing a bunch of videos for Tekken during the build up to Tekken 8's release just a few days ago now, and I recently just did a video on the new trailer for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. So there was a couple things I wanted to get out of the way before, I eventually sat down to do this review. So yeah, I'm a bit late. I do apologise for that, but as long as I did it before the next chapter came out, which I've still got a few weeks for, I thought out of all of them, I kind of figured JoJoLands was probably the most expendable in terms of being pushed back. But with that all out of the way, we're finally here, finally talking about chapter 11. And yeah, we're only 1 month away from a year of JoJoLands. JoJoLands started in February 2023. So yeah, next month is the 1 year anniversary of the beginning of the serialization of it, which is crazy. It's insane how quickly that's come, and insane how much we've had from the JoJoLands in that time. So yeah, with that all out the way, without further ado, let's just begin. This is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 9, The JoJoLands, Chapter 11, The Hustle Part 2. So we begin this chapter pretty much in the immediate aftermath of the end of the previous chapter, where the enemy stand user, this mysterious owner of the lava rock, pretty much used their stand to stab Dragona through the neck with their knife. And it was a pretty serious ending to the end of the previous chapter. Obviously it was kind of like, I don't think Dragona's going to die here, but it was a pretty serious injury, and at the time it didn't really seem like there was a healer in the group yet, so it was kind of interesting to see how Dragona was going to, survive this outcome, at least, survive it and not be, critically injured afterwards. But we start this chapter with Dragona using their stand smooth operators to basically move the knife wound from their throat over to a nearby bottle, and upon doing so, pretty much causes the bottle to be split in half. And this is a pretty crazy, ability that smooth operators can do. Obviously we've seen smooth operators do a number of mix and matching and swapping things around. I think one of my favourite ones was in the first chapter when Dragona used smooth operators to displace the police officer's eye so that he was blinded. They used it in a previous chapter as well, I think during the stuff in the villa, when they used the displacing ability to, kind of dislocate their thumb almost to get out of the string bindings. So we've seen smooth operators be used in a lot of creative ways, but this is borderline overpowered in some ways, because all those other things that Dragona has been able to do, for the most part, they're things that can be easily taken off and reattached, if that makes sense. Like the driver's license at the beginning of the part, the finger, it's like you can take a finger off and then reattach it. Like you can take a driver's license picture off and reattach it. Those are things that can be taken away and then put back on, so to speak. This is a level beyond, where this is literally taking something like a wound, like a stab wound to the neck. You can't take a wound off and then reapply it. That's it. It does, obviously things just don't work like that. But this new way that Dragona uses smooth operators is just insane. This opens up such a new level of potential of what they can do with this stand in terms of moving a certain, even concepts, you can argue, maybe Dragona can move a concept or something that isn't normally removable, can be applied to a different thing. Who says they can't, if they get shot by something, if they get shot by a bullet, who says they can't take the bullet out and, reapply it into the leg of the person who shot them? That's completely possible now, and that was the thing that we kind of didn't really know, because obviously we're still so early in the part, only chapter 11 at this point in JoJolian, we were barely just I think we'd only just beaten Dyer at this point, so very, very early in terms of where we are. So we're still very, very early in that respect, and I think all of these stands are going to be shown to do things that we had no idea were possible. But this one is particularly just really impressive, and I think absolutely will make Dragona the resident healer of the group, which I think will naturally lead to this part being maybe not so much more violent, but I just think the injuries being a bit worse, or the injuries being a bit more severe, like maybe like loss of limbs and stuff like that. Because the thing about like previous parts is when there's a healer, like usually the injuries are a bit more severe. Like someone will lose a hand because someone will eventually, come back and reattach that hand and stuff like that. Like it happened in part 4 with Josuke, it happened in part 5 with Giorno, happened in part 6 with Foo Fighters. I would say part 7's equivalent was probably Hot Pants and Cream Starter. That was kind of the closest we had to a healing stand. From the best of my memory though, like, part 8 didn't have one. And I think that was, times that with how small the core group in part 8 was. And yeah, like we didn't really have any of that in part 8, someone who's dedicated to like just healing somebody, but in part 8, most of the time if somebody got injured, they had like plasters put on them or something like that. And so it's kind of cool to go back to that, to now have a character again that can be like, okay, yeah, if you're injured, like smooth operators will fix you. So like right off the bat, I thought this was a really cool thing, very very interesting. I think it will definitely open up the door to a lot of potential cool things that smooth operators can do. And I've said in so many different of these reviews now, like this is the kind of thing I've been the most excited for with part 9, is like seeing how Araki uses these stands, because from the start, like from chapter 1, it's been pretty clear that these aren't like the usual, people call them punch ghosts, but these aren't the usual like combat oriented stands. I would say Paco's is probably one of the only ones, and even then that's still even like a more of a utility one, but it's just like Paco can use it in combat scenarios. So it's just very interesting, and I can't wait to see how these stands used. I've already been so impressed with how the Hustle's being used, November Rain's being used. Like smooth operators has impressed me in the past, but like this is again a whole other thing. So yeah, just a very very cool stuff. I think so far the only stand that I'm not like completely sold on yet, in terms of like I haven't seen anything that's like, wow, this is really really like crazy ingenious stuff, is probably the Mate Kudasai, which is Usagi's stand. Obviously it's had its cool moments, especially how they beat the cat in I think like chapter 6 or 7, but like they haven't really had their chance to shine yet, but I'm sure it's coming. I'm sure we'll see some crazy set piece that allows Usagi to use the Mate Kudasai in a really cool way. But yeah, just 2 pages in, and this is already like really really cool stuff. So speaking of Usagi, Usagi is overjoyed that Dragona has managed to, survive this deadly stab wound to the neck, and basically has a sort of epiphany of sorts, of where he talks about how like this wave of despair washed over him, like he was about to lose everything, all these things that made him happy, and then Usagi just flat out declares his love for Dragona. And I thought this was very sweet, and like I'm not a big shipping person in terms of like, oh, I like this character being with this character. In some communities that I in the past have been involved with, mainly Final Fantasy, like it completely turns me off like even caring about it. I hate shipping discourse. I think it ruins most fandoms. But if I was to ever say I ship this character and this character, I hope the end goal with Usagi and Dragona is that they get together. I think they make a really good couple. I've enjoyed their dynamic so far. Their stuff during the watch salesman stuff in the previous chapters was really fun and cute. And yeah, I just I dig it. I dig the relationship. I think it's really cool that Usagi openly is into Dragona, despite all the confusion about Dragona's gender and what's kind of going on there. Are they trans? Are they intersex? Are they a man who just likes to present as a woman? We still don't know. We probably never will know, in all honesty, knowing Araki. But yeah, it's cool that despite technically knowing that Dragona is I guess was born male, whatever they identify now as is regardless. But like it's still cool that despite that Usagi is still clearly open to professing his love for Dragona. My only hope is that this doesn't become a gag, and like at some point when if Dragona ever decides to reciprocate these feelings, and then reveals like to Usagi like, oh, by the way, I am a guy. I hope we don't get that thing, and then Usagi's like, what the hell, and the freak out gag, comedy moment, like what happens all the time in animes and mangas. I hope that doesn't happen, because I think it's 2024. I think we're just so beyond that now. I would actually I would be more interested, and I would be more of a fan of this actually being a kind of like Usagi being interested in, Dragona regardless of what their gender is or, anything like that. I think doing that would be really cheap and just be really hollow, and yeah, I would just hate it. So yeah, I thought this was a cute thing. I thought it was a very funny scene. Obviously, Dragona pretty much straight away is like, thanks, but me and Jodio were not really into the whole like relationship thing. So I don't know if this implies that Dragona and Jodio are like asexual or whatever or anything like that, or they just don't really care because they've just been so focused on defending their mother and getting rich and all this stuff. But yeah, I thought this was just very funny stuff, very cute. I enjoyed it, and I hope it goes somewhere. I hope in however many chapters it takes, I hope this ends like these two end up becoming a couple. I think it'd be really sweet. So after this, the group start looking around for the enemy Stan user, because after Jodio managed to pin him down with November Rain before he escaped, it made his leg bleed. So they have a trail to follow. Yeah, like, it's quite funny because again, Usagi's like, ask for a metal detector and I'll find him, and then Paco's like, oh, we don't need to actually, like, we can just follow the blood trail, and Usagi's like, oh, okay, like, kind of disappointed that he can't use the Stan. I thought that was funny. And then they basically like go through the parking lot and start like just grabbing people by the neck. Like Paco here just grabs this dude by the neck getting out of his car, and it's like, I can't feel any sand on his skin. I don't think this guy is the Stan user. And the guy like runs off like, what the fuck, like, I'm getting the police. I do wonder if this is going to come back in some way, if like during the climax of this fight the police are going to get involved. That'd be interesting, but who knows. But I just thought it was funny how Paco's just literally grabbing people by the neck and like, don't think you're the Stan user, you can go. They eventually track down the enemy Stan user to the car of Leo and his girlfriend, and these two are back. Which is obvious. I think, it was kind of obvious they were going to come back at some point. So, they're kind of walking around Leo's car, and Leo's shouting at them like, hey, get out the way. And then Paco grabs him by the neck as well and starts choking him out. And then Jodio opens the door to get his girlfriend out of the car, Leo's girlfriend out of the car. And then that's when he feels the coarse sand, and then he's like, oh shit. And then that's when the enemy sand user appears again, that he is blended into the car door. Again, the visuals on this guy's stand are so crazy. Like, I love this stand ability already. Like, it's so just visually just so stunning to look at, the way that Araki is drawing him blending into things. I think some of the pages in the last chapter was like honestly some of my favorite in recent memory, especially like the ones where he appeared out of the sky, with his hands in the shape of the bird. Just really crazy visuals, and this is no different. So the enemy Stan user tries to attack Jodio, but Jodio luckily manages to dodge the attack in time and also kick the girlfriend out the way and smashes the car window. And then this is when Leo kind of like starts accusing them of like, oh hey, you beating up my girlfriend, you damaging my car, what the hell. And then the enemy Stan user keeps trying to stab Jodio, but eventually he disappears, and then they lose the trail again. And like Leo's, shouting at all four of them, like, you shitty brats, what you doing, blah blah, gonna get the police kicked, whatever shite he's talking about. But then the watch from the Diamond salesman that Leo bought starts like skidding away nearly towards the water, and then that's when they realise that, oh, the watch is actually following the lava rock because the enemy Stan user has the lava rock, so they need to follow the watch in order to find where the enemy Stan user is, which I thought, was a pretty ingenious way of continuing the fight, or continuing the tracking of this enemy Stan user. I thought that was pretty clever. So I'll kind of just skip through these next couple pages because it is mostly just the same of them like walking around and trying to find this guy. There is a really cool bit of conversation on this page though, where Usagi kind of starts freaking out a bit, and he's like, I think this guy's too high level for us. I think we need to just back off and retreat and blah blah blah. Like, I know Paco said he wasn't Mafia, but this is too much for us. And then Dragona has a really nice kind of like pep talk with Usagi here, where they're basically like, like in this moment, that's the only thing that really matters, is making sure that by the time we get home, we don't look back at this moment and start thinking about, I wish we had kept chasing the guy, I wish we'd done this, I wish we had done that. Like, that's more dangerous than whoever this guy is. And, it's a good motivational conversation, and I think it kind of, you can see it kind of like affects Usagi here. But then the guy appears behind Paco, he's blended in with the waves, again, just crazy stuff with this stand, and he tries to attack Paco. I kind of thought this page here was funny because Paco's like hat looks like ginormous here, and it reminds me of like part 6 Jotaro, because there's like some shots in part 6 where like Jotaro's hat just looks like really tall for some reason and really big, and it's weird, and this is just, it just reminds me of that. So yeah, the enemy stand user like tries to attack Paco from behind and manages to slice his leg, but then Jodio gets behind him and kind of pins him down. But then the enemy stand user turns to Jodio and is basically like, I was kind enough to give you the chance to, you know, give up with the rock earlier, but it's too late for that, you gotta die now. He then puts the knife to Jodio's throat and basically tries to push him into the water, and as they're doing that, Jodio manages to pull out November Rain and attack the enemy stand user with his like heavy raindrops, which not only, you know, pins the enemy stand user down, but also breaks his dagger, which is very interesting that, you know, the raindrops are that heavy that they can break what appears to be, you know, a steel knife or a steel blade. We then get some interesting visuals here as Dragona starts panicking because although, you know, Jodio has managed to break the enemy stand user's knife, unfortunately November Rain's raindrops don't actually, you know, break the surface that well. They only go so far down. And yeah, we got a good visual here of like, you know, Jodio underneath the water with the enemy stand user who's managed to blend in, you know, with the water beneath the waves. But then you get these like kind of droplets kind of like piercing the kind of surface of the water, but they don't go all the way down, they just kind of stop. And it's like a reverse kind of raindrop effect. It looks really cool. And then the two kind of like grapple as, you know, Jodio tries to fight off the guy and the guy's, you know, trying to stab Jodio with the broken knife. It's here that Usagi manages to kick a nearby life raft into the November Rain's heavy rain droplets, and this, you know, obviously, you know, shreds the lifeboat but also pressures it down so it starts going to below the surface. But because the rain has pierced the raft and now oxygen is coming out of the raft, Jodio is able to use the air coming out of the raft to basically breathe underwater, which is a very clever thing here. And then this is where we get probably my favourite panel in the chapter, where, you know, Jodio is breathing the air that's coming out of the raft, and then you get pretty much what is our like actual first proper shot of the enemy stand user and what they look like. But then my favourite part is the part in the background, like I was saying earlier, where you see the raindrops kind of like just piercing the surface and then kind of like dissipating, which just gives a really cool visual effect that I just think really looks nice. We now finally get into the closing pages of the chapter here, as Dragona and Usagi kind of realise that Jodio's plan is to basically like wait out the enemy stand user, because now that Jodio has a source of air, basically he's now waiting for the enemy stand user to either drown or to, you know, give up and return to the surface to get air, where, you know, the others will more than likely promptly beat the shit out of him. So that's kind of where we leave things with Jodio and the enemy stand user. But then Paco starts having a very interesting kind of conversation with Dragona here, where Paco starts going like, you know what, I've been thinking about it and I take it back. Like, I said I was going to kill this guy, but I changed my mind now. Like, let's make him one of us. And I'll kind of get into like my thoughts on this once this whole kind of like thing's done. But obviously this confuses Dragona and Usagi, who are like, what the hell? And then Paco's basically like, I get the impression that this guy is actually a good guy. And then we get the very funny reveal that Paco at some point, you know, off screen, actually checked the bag that the enemy stand user put the cat's heads in that Jodio found a few chapters ago. And it turns out that the cat heads were actually an illusion themselves, and weren't actually killed by the enemy stand user who was their owner. They were in fact potatoes, and the guy used his stand to create the illusion that they were the cat heads. So he was actually, while he was painting himself as some, you know, ruthless, remorseless killer who had no love for the cats and was so evil, he didn't care, was so dangerous that he was willing to kill his beloved pets as a message. No, he didn't actually do that. That was just a way to convince Paco and Jodio and the others to give up the lava rock, to scare them into giving up the lava rock. And basically Paco knew this and has basically decided that, you know what, I think this is actually a good person. He clearly has an attachment to the cats. He didn't want to kill them. He only pretended that he killed them to send a message, because, you know, he probably didn't want to kill us unless he had to. And it's a very interesting kind of change here. This guy went from someone who, you know, we all thought was this ruthless mafia killer who was, you know, going to present the rock human version of Passione, you know, as all of us were theorising, myself included. And no, it turns out he was actually somebody who cared about the animals, who didn't want to kill our main cast, our main party, unless he absolutely had to. And because Paco, you know, theorises that this guy probably knows more about the rock than even Rohan did, he decides that letting him live and, you know, possibly joining them is a win-win scenario for the both of them, because he gets the rock and Paco and the others get all the information they can get out of him. And, you know, it's a win-win for the both of them, because, you know, it allows the two to team up. They both get what they want. Jodio and Paco, Dragona and Usagi, they get paid, and they could potentially get even more money out of the rock if this, you know, if there are, you know, all these riches from the rock. and the guy gets the rock for whatever reason that he wants it. And it's a very interesting proposition that Paco pitches here, and he basically tells Dragona to tell Jodio not to kill this guy because now he's decided that they should team up. So the chapter pretty much ends here, but there is a couple pages afterwards that's basically just gag stuff with Leo where, he's lost the watch and he's searching in the ocean for it, but he can't find it, and his girlfriend is like, "You're lame, I can't believe you lost it, I'm gonna get a ride with somebody else, see you later loser, blah blah blah," whatever. I don't really care, to be honest. I'm kind of like, I just don't really care about him. I don't care about Leo or his girlfriend. Like, I honestly hope we don't see them again in any future chapters. I mean, maybe later down the line it'd be funny if they showed up, but like, for now, I'm just good with them. Like, the joke was funny. It was funny to see this guy that looks like Joshu, and they had some comedy moments. It was funny when Paco grabbed, him by the neck in this chapter, but like, I just think the joke's over now. Like, I just don't think there's anything really more they can do with it, and I think if they keep showing up, I think it's just going to take away from like the main story stuff, which I'm like way more interested in and would rather, got more screen time. So with all that nonsense at the end out the way, the chapter is done, so without further ado, let's go to my closing thoughts. So overall, I thought this was a good chapter. Like, I don't think any chapter really has been bad in part 9. I've enjoyed most of them, maybe some more than others and some less than others. I personally enjoyed the last chapter more, definitely a lot more than this one. There was some good stuff in this chapter, but like overall, I just felt like there was a lot of kind of like, not so much fluff, but there was a lot of moments of just kind of like standing around and talking, especially when they were looking, across the beach for the guy. Like, there was some good stuff in there, but overall, there was some moments, there was some downtime, which and normally I'm a fan of downtime, but like in the middle of that with the pacing and like in the middle of the tense, like we got to find this guy, just kind of stop, they're taking that long to find him. It just kind of like, yeah, like I said, I don't think any of it was bad. I think the last chapter was just so exciting, and like seeing this guy's ability in full and seeing the ways he was using it was just really good. And it's no surprise that my favorite parts of this chapter was, when the guy was using that same stand power again, but in different ways. I definitely think overall this chapter is very much carried by Paco's sudden, choice to, have this guy join them. I definitely think that is easily the most interesting part of this entire chapter. And I think was definitely something that definitely made me, even more excited to see the next chapter. I think that's something that Araki's been very good at so far with the last couple of chapters. Is like the last couple of chapters now, pretty much since this guy first showed up, and we got the reveal that he was, Paco in disguise. I think Araki has done a very good job in making, me very excited to see what happens next. Like, I really want to see where this goes now, and probably next chapter I'll be able to see like, oh, I can't wait to see where he goes now from here, whatever he does in the next chapter. I am interested in seeing if the next chapter like wraps up this fight and then he potentially joins us at the end of it. I don't know. I could easily see, the fight going on for another chapter, but the pacing of this part so far has been so quick and snappy. Like, I also, would not be surprised if this whole thing wraps up in at the end of this chapter, and then maybe chapter 13 is, kind of like this guy talking, we get a bit more exposition, info dumps, and, find out more about this guy, his name, and see if he actually does join us. I think that'll be very exciting. I'm totally, for this guy joining us. I think it'd be really cool, really exciting. I think one thing that JoJo has always been very good at is having, the enemies join the group. It doesn't happen often, and it doesn't, happen every time, but when it happens, it's always fun. Obviously, part 4 is, the best for that, because you got characters like Okuyasu and Yuya. But yeah, I'm very interested in seeing where it goes. I hope, Araki manages to pull it off. I think as well, what will be really exciting is, obviously for me, is seeing this stand more often in action. I think this stand is amazing. I think having it in the main group would be really, really cool. So yeah, I just hope it happens, mainly. Like, I just think it'd be so fun to do, and would lead to some fun encounters, some fun stand fights, some amazing artwork. I think it'd be so fun to do. I hope it's not just a bait and switch and Araki actually goes through with it. So yeah, I'm totally for it. Like, I really hope it happens. Other than that, though, I will leave things here. I don't think there's anything else I can really talk about. I did enjoy the chapter. I thought it was good. Is it my favourite chapter? No. Is it my least favourite chapter? No. It was good. I think the last chapter was definitely more enjoyable. But I think definitely this chapter was kind of mainly built around that reveal that Paco, wants this guy to join the group. I think that was definitely the most intriguing thing about what was going on here. But yeah, definitely can't wait for the next chapter. It's going to be some fun stuff coming up. Almost a year of JoJo, which, like I said earlier, is just crazy. But yeah, for now, I think that'll do. So thank you all for watching, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.
We await your return, warrior.